where we interview world-class school librarians. And this is sponsored by San Jose State University School of Information, and I'm Professor David Loertscher. And today we have our first, I think, expert from a related field today who has some great ideas for credentialed librarians across the English-speaking world. And so it is my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Flowers. And Dr. Flowers, would you introduce yourself to our audience?
Yes, thank you so much for even having me on the podcast. My name is Dr. Tiffany A. Flowers. I'm actually an endowed professor of literacy at Central Michigan State University. I actually got started in this field many, many years ago. I started out as a substitute teacher, and I was also working part-time in a doctor's office at the time. I was just trying to pay my way through school. And one of the things that kind of struck me when I was working in those two capacities were the large numbers of children who were struggling with reading that I noticed as a substitute teacher, as well as the number of adults that would come in who could not fill out a doctor's office basic form that just had their name, address, phone number, and then the more complicated information about their health information. And so I ended up developing this passion for literacy because of that within the communities where I was working. And after that, everything just kind of took off from there. I ended up going to VCU to earn a master's in early childhood. From there, I went to the University of Iowa, earned another master's in social foundations of education. And then I ended up doing my culminating work at the University of Iowa as well in language literacy and culture. And so since that time, I've worked as a state uh, program specialist at the State Department in Georgia. I worked there for a year as an administrator over state reading for grades K through 12. I was the remedial education coordinator for the state. I've also been on several advisory boards, such as Reading Rainbow, where we helped kind of reignite the love for the show. So you'll see the reboot coming soon. And I also had the chance to work in many different capacities alongside librarians, such as planning for statewide African American read-ins, as well as training teachers at various conferences and school districts around the country. So this isn't my first, rodeo with our media specialists slash librarians. Librarians play a critical role in what we do as literacy professionals. So I'm excited to be here with you tonight.
Oh, that's super. So our nation seems to be floundering in the lack of skill on reading scores, that is. So over the years, have you developed any preferences in the whole skill building arena?
So, it's so much to unpack with that. When I did my dissertation work, one of the areas that I looked at was actually teachers' beliefs about literacy. But more specifically, I looked at whether teachers actually have the same beliefs as what they actually teach in the classroom. So when I did my dissertation work, it was a statewide study across the state of South Carolina, and I found that no, they do not. You're going to find such varying differences because of all the trainings teachers are doing, their initial teacher training. You're going to find a lot of disparities in terms of the way that teachers are trained overall, because in some schools, when I look across the Midwest, children's literature, relationships with libraries, relationships with communities, focusing on family literacy is a priority. But when I look across Southern schools, that's not necessarily the same. They don't even take the same courses. So regional differences play a huge role in I would say, the professional development of pre-service and in-service teachers just across regions within the United States. There's no uniformity at all.
Oh,
And
wow.
then, and then we have political perspectives. What I find is that when you go to areas where we have more highly selective colleges, I would say, or highly selective universities, there seems to be an attitude toward libraries and schools and literacy as if it's something that is interwoven into the fabric of the community. But when you go into places where maybe it's remote places, where it's very rural, it's very, the emphasis, they have libraries, but the emphasis is not there on literacy. And we know that that's the case. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
So if there's a reading specialist in the school of some kind, literacy coach or whatever, what is the role they usually play in the school?
Okay. So I just want to start by saying that, the term literacy coach or literacy coaches came along with the Bush administration. Before that, we didn't have literacy coaches. We used to have what we call reading specialists. And reading specialists were these phenomenal reading teachers who had a passion for literacy. They usually had 2 degrees already. They would go in and they would get either an M.A.T in literacy, or they would get a specialist degree, which would end up being their third degree, and they specialized. And so, what the reading specialists would do is they would, in addition to knowing how to teach reading and knowing how to do professional development for teachers, they were also the reading recovery teachers, right? So they would do all of the remedial education for the school. They also developed, alongside the assistant principals, they would develop uh, the literacy plan for the entire school in collaboration with all of the grade levels. And so reading specialists used to work hand in hand with the media specialists. So they would leave the media specialist or the school librarian with all of the power to be able to bring children into the fold when it came to books and literacy. And so we kind of viewed librarians back then as kind of our ambassadors for literacy. And so what would happen is librarians would have an entire curriculum that focused on teaching students the Dewey Decimal System, how libraries were organized, what to expect when you come into the library, the culture of being able to check out as many books as you want. That was what the expectation was. And as, funding cycles started changing, people started thinking that media specialists and librarians weren't important. So it's not unusual for somebody to go to a school and not even see a media specialist or a librarian now, which is crazy because that person in that school is kind of the conductor to the orchestra. They're the person that is ushering children into literacy. So taking them out is pulling children out of the literacy process, right? It's making it where they have less and less access to books, wide reading, genres. Genre study is dead if you don't have a media specialist or a librarian, unless you just have that teacher that's really, really motivated to do that. But media specialists are always the ones who are pulling all the books for the teachers across themes, all the different thematic units that they're doing across science and social studies to ensure they have ample access to nonfiction materials such as magazines and periodicals. And so when you pull them out of it, we no longer have them. And so now we have these literacy coaches that were brought about maybe 15, 20 years ago during the Bush administration. They have less education than the reading specialists used to. And so programs now are trying to figure out ways to get reading specialists more education so that they can know about books and things like that. But a reading specialist isn't a replacement for for a media specialist by any shape, by any shape of the imagination at all. And what librarians are going to have to understand is with the literacy coaches are going to be depending on them because they may or may not have had children's literature even within their own reading programs, which is
Wow.
something that I'm looking at now. I'm actually looking at a policy study about that now where I'm going through and I'm looking across all the different programs that we have in literacy to see which ones actually require that a reading specialist takes a children's literature course. And I can tell you that the majority of them do not always require that.
Wow.
So, these are some of the holes within literacy that we're going to have to fill. And we're going to have to be cognizant of what's going on across these programs, these regions, and within these school districts and schools.